Hi everyone, my name is Libby Ferak, and today I am going to be talking about the barriers of what LGBTQ individuals often face as they are trying to access healthcare. This is something that as a pre-med student, this has become very important to me because I believe that all healthcare providers should make sure every patient is, respected, safe, and they feel understood. And I think it's a really important, thing to talk about as a future health professional and to make sure that they are fully educated themselves on the experiences and also the challenges that these LGBTQ individuals may face as they are enduring their care. So, even though healthcare systems have become more inclusive over time, it is important to point out that many LGBTQ individuals still often experience discrimination. There is lack of provider understanding and also barriers that have negatively affected both their mental and their physical outcomes. So, this healthcare access does play a major role in overall well-being and quality of their life. So, understanding these barriers are really important when we are trying to work towards a more equitable healthcare system. All right, so first off, we have why does LGBTQ healthcare access matter? And so this topic matters because many LGBTQ individuals are still experiencing, unequal treatment in the healthcare settings today, unfortunately. A lot of these people have reported feelings about being anxious, about going to the doctor, or just healthcare providers because they fear being judged, misunderstood, or treated differently because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, or even just, feeling like they're not being taken seriously. This fear can actually lead people to delay or completely avoid medical care, even when they really need it. And so, over time, avoiding routine health care or preventative care can seriously affect one's long-term health outcomes. Research also has shown that many LGBTQ patients have experienced discrimination in the healthcare settings, including feelings of being, dismissed, not taken seriously, as I mentioned before, or experiences that can make it harder for patients to trust the healthcare systems and actually feel comfortable seeking care in the future. So, overall, this issue affects both their mental and physical health, which is why it remains such an important topic today and why we need to bring this up more often. As you can see kind of to the right, I decided to provide, a graph of common feelings or negative experiences between the differences that have been reported between LGBTQ individuals, which is the blue percents, and then also green shows, non-LGBTQ individuals. And it just kind of goes to show the difference of, treatment among just how people are living their lives with something, that is kind of out of their control. So it's quite unfortunate. So moving on, we are now going to talk about the historical context of LGBTQ healthcare. And so to kind of better understand the current healthcare barriers, it is very important to look at the history behind them and why they're set in place. So historically, LGBTQ identities were often viewed negatively with both psychology and medicine. So for many years, actually, homosexuality, was classified as a mental disorder under the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual used in psychology. And crazy enough, it wasn't removed until 1973. So when you think about that in hindsight, that's really not too long ago. So because of that history, a lot of stigma and discrimination became deeply connected to healthcare and mental health systems. During the HIV and AIDS crisis in the 1980s and 1990s, LGBTQ communities, especially gay men, faced major discrimination and blame for this. So many individuals were, ignored, mistreated by healthcare systems during that time and just by everyone in general. It was a horrible time and terrible treatment to these unfortunate individuals. And so, although healthcare and psychology have become much more inclusive over the years, these historical experiences still contribute to the mistrust towards healthcare institutions to some LGBTQ individuals today. I just kind of wanted to include, a visual image or timeline kind of healthcare and, LGBTQ individuals. We start off over here in 1966 with the Compton's cafeteria riot. In 1969, it was the Stonewall riot. And then, as I mentioned on the last slide, we have homosexuality was finally removed from the DSM. But then here we are getting into the 1980s and 90s. So we have 1981, our first reported case of AIDS. In 83, it was the Don't Ask, Don't Tell allowed gay and lesbian people to actually serve in the military. So kind of making some progress there. And then in 2003, we have Lawrence versus Texas, the decriminalized sodomy. In 2013, we kind of make a jump here, 10 years. Gender identity disorder changed to gender dysphoria in the DSM. 2015, federal marriage equality finally took place. Oh my goodness. And then 2016, we have Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act. And in 2020, we have the Bostock versus Clayton. The county provides federal workplace protections. So, we obviously have evolved over time, but it's kind of crazy that so much has been more recently or in recent years, if you will. So this is not just something that kind of came out of nowhere. It's still a very prevalent issue. So kind of going back to this, whole main idea or topic of this presentation is what are these major barriers to healthcare access for LGBTQ individuals? And there are several of them that these individuals can face when they are trying to access proper health care. So, one of the biggest issues I'm going to start with is discrimination from the healthcare providers themselves. So, some patients have felt, reported feelings of being judged, dismissed, or uncomfortable during their medical appointments because of just who they are and their identity. A lot of LGBTQ individuals also fear being outed or having to explain themselves repeatedly to the providers who may not fully, understand the LGBTQ healthcare needs. And honestly, that fear alone can stop people from getting the care they need. One bad experience can completely turn you away and dismiss it or push it to the side, and there you are, bam, you don't want to ever seek proper health care again. So, research has shown that nearly 1 in 5 LGBTQ individuals avoid healthcare because they fear discrimination or mistreatment. And that statistic really shows how serious this issue can become. I mean, that's 20%. So, that is quite a large amount of people that are not getting good healthcare or just not taking into account of their health, and it's because of external reasons and not even that they don't want to. It's just because of how they're afraid of feeling when they're at these appointments. And then there are also barriers related to finances, insurance coverage, limited access to affirming healthcare services. And I want to especially highlight for transgender individuals. In some areas, there may be a few providers who are properly trained in LGBTQ healthcare, but this is no guarantee, unfortunately. This is just the reality of it. So there is a clearly lack of knowledge and education in this realm when it comes to medical care. So you may be kind of, asking yourself, like, what is happening? Why are providers like this? Why is our healthcare system failing so many LGBTQ individuals? And a major issue of this is because of the provider education and bias. We all have a bias to us, and it can get into the way of people doing their jobs. So, research has shown that many healthcare providers feel underprepared when it comes to LGBTQ healthcare needs, and some providers may not fully understand what gender identity is or inclusive terminology or the specific healthcare concerns that LGBTQ patients may experience. So, because of this, patients may experience things like misgendering or providers making assumptions about relationships or identities, even when the situations are unintentional. They aren't always meant to hurt or harm the patient, but sometimes it just happens. It's just that lack of education. So this makes the patients feel very uncomfortable or unsafe too. So communication is such an important part of healthcare, and when patients don't feel this respect or don't feel understood, it can damage that trust between patients and providers. As someone planning to go into healthcare, myself, I think that this really highlights how important education, respectful communication, and being culturally competent is and are when you are providing patient care. And I know for a fact that I'm going to make sure I am very aware of this and take this very seriously when I'm interacting with each and every one of my patients. So, the current healthcare system has led to multiple consequences of the health of LGBTQ individuals. So, I'm going to touch on those now. These healthcare barriers that can have serious effects on both mental and physical health. And when people avoid healthcare because of fear or discrimination, they may miss preventative care, mental health support, or treatment for medical conditions early on, which is something I'm very passionate about. Preventative care is very crucial and can help, ongoing illnesses that patients aren't aware of or they develop into way worse forms because they were not aware of the symptoms that were onsetting earlier. And it's because again, lack of education and lack of healthcare or just choosing not to go. And many LGBTQ individuals are too scared to go now. So that's a problem. Experiences of discrimination can also increase the stress, anxiety, depression, and also just feelings of isolation. In psychology, this is often connected to something called minority stress theory, which explains how ongoing discrimination and stigma can negatively affect mental health as time goes on. So, when the LGBTQ individuals consistently experience discrimination in healthcare settings, it can seriously affect their mental and physical health over long term. And research has also connected negative healthcare experiences with lower satisfaction with care and also less trust in the healthcare systems overall. Kind of focusing more on, modern days or what's going on now. There has fortunately been some progress made. You know, um, there are very different perspectives on this issue, and some people do believe that healthcare systems have improved a lot, and then there's also definitely more awareness today surrounding LGBTQ healthcare needs. So that is good. And also many hospitals and clinics have started implementing more inclusive policies and practice, which again, that's phenomenal, but we need more, okay? We need more. And then healthcare education surrounding LGBTQ issues has also increased compared to previous generations. But as great as, this may sound, there are still those challenges that still exist, are very apparent. So, at the same time, many researchers and patients argue that major barriers are there, and these individuals continue to report feelings of discrimination, unequal access to care, and providers who are not trained properly on this or just are not understanding their needs or what um they need for their treatment plan. So some healthcare providers argue that these issues are not always caused by intentional discrimination, but instead by limited resources, lack of education, or insufficient training opportunities. Others believe that healthcare reform is happening too slowly and that stronger policies are still needed to improve equality overall with our healthcare. Issue also continues to appear in our current events and media discussions. One of the biggest topics right now includes debates surrounding transgender health care and gender affirming care. different states and political groups, are constantly debating the laws and policies that affect LGBTQ healthcare access, and it currently does seem to vary state by state, unfortunately. Social media has also played a major role in increasing awareness about healthcare discrimination and inequality. Many LGBTQ individuals now share their personal healthcare experiences online, which has helped bring more attention to these issues. But at the same time, political decisions and healthcare policies can strongly affect whether LGBTQ individuals feel safe and supportive when accessing the healthcare services in the first place. So, overall, these discussions show that LGBTQ healthcare access remains an important social, political, and psychological issue today. So clearly we do need, some reforming of the system or some more education here to, improve it and make healthcare better for LGBTQ individuals. So there are several ways that we can do this. One of the most important steps, is increasing LGBTQ cultural competency training for the providers. Better education can help provide better communication that's more respectful and also better understand what these individuals need for their healthcare. Creating healthcare and inclusive healthcare environments is also important. Something as simple as using inclusive language, respecting pronouns, and making patients feel comfortable can make the biggest difference in patient experience. And then also improving mental health support services and increasing access to affirming healthcare are also important steps moving forward. And then, in addition, we need to continue LGBTQ healthcare research that can help these systems better understand patient experiences and improve future healthcare policies and practices. As we near the end here, I kind of wanted to conclude this presentation by just saying that LGBTQ individuals are still facing important barriers when they're trying to get good healthcare today. There's discrimination, lack of provider education, and also fear of judgment and unequal access to services that are all negatively affecting both their mental and physical health outcomes. So, although progress has definitely been made over time, we've got a lot of work to do, and it needs to be done in our healthcare environments, and we need to make sure that they are becoming more inclusive, respectful, and supportive for everyone. As as future healthcare professionals, researchers, and community members, continuing to improve education, communication, and healthcare equality is extremely important and needs to continue to be focused on because everyone deserves safe and affirming healthcare, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And then also as we ended here, I just kind of wanted to provide this slide too. Just by saying everyone deserves safe and affirming healthcare. Does not matter who you are, where you come from, what you identify as, you deserve proper healthcare that has good education behind it and where you feel supported. And then I also included my references for this. So thank you very much for watching my presentation, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I appreciate you.